Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Di, and today I'm bringing you my November wrap-up for the novels that I read. I have been on vacation for the last 2 weeks, just trying to relax, not think about work, so that is a big part of the reason why this wrap-up is later than most of my other monthly wrap-ups, but such is life. In November, I read 5 books. Yes, 5 novels. I truthfully have been kind of feeling slumpy lately. The last few months, the books that I have been reading have just not been the greatest. Like, they're okay. Most of them aren't even getting 4 stars for me, which is not really great. I'm not sure why I keep picking up books that are 3 stars or lower, but I'm trying to get myself out of that rut. It's been rather difficult because I pick up books thinking that I'm going to enjoy them and I end up not really enjoying them, and it's just been disheartening. But anyway, enough about my complaining. Let's get into the books that I read in November. So the first 2 books I read in November were Heart of Evil, which is the second book in the Crew of Hunters series by Heather Graham, and Tiger's Eye, which is the third book in the Stacey Justice series by Barbara Anino. I do have a separate video up on my channel for both of these books. It's called Finishing the Series. It's the very first video in this set of videos that I want to do for books that I am reading in series that I'm trying to complete. That series of videos, though, is going to be a little bit more spoilery. It will contain things about previous installments in each series. I could touch on things that might be perceived as spoilery as well in the synopsis of the book. So just know that going in, but I will give you my thoughts, very summarized thoughts on both of these books right now. So let's start off with Heart of Evil. Like I said, it's the second book in the Crew of Hunters series. This is a series that I've been really interested in getting into. I've heard Sarah from Steeped in Books talk about this series quite a bit. It is a very long series. I think the 30th book in the series is coming out next year, so obviously I'm really far behind. But this one has always interested me because of the paranormal investigative aspect of it. That being said, I read the first book in this series, which I believe is called Phantom Evil, earlier in 2019, and then I followed it up with this one just in November. And both of those books for me were just 3-star reads. I'm not quite feeling it yet. This particular installment, it follows a serial killer who has a grudge against a figure who is being portrayed by one of the Civil War reenactors. The first book in this series was more paranormal in aspect, but this one followed more the serial killer aspect, which is fine. I enjoy those types of books. There are chapters in here that are called interludes that are purely from the serial killer's point of view, which were interesting. But as far as the paranormal aspect of this book goes, it was very passive, I guess you would call it. They didn't have anything to do with the mystery itself. They were more like helpers and guides as far as helping an ancestor of this Civil War figure avoid the serial killer, kind of. So, yeah. For me, when I'm going into a book about paranormal investigators, I want more of that paranormal aspect. If this had just been like a murder mystery, I think that would have put me in a different mind frame, and I might have enjoyed it a little more. That being said, Civil War reenactments and the Civil War itself is not something I'm really interested in. So the first good portion of this book really sets up that Civil War reenactment. They're getting ready to have the reenactment, they're assigning roles and all kinds of things like that. And from there, it wasn't grabbing me. So while the murder mystery portion itself was interesting and the serial killer aspect was interesting, I only gave this book 3 stars. I will be continuing with this series because the next book, I believe, has to do with Jack the Ripper, and Jack the Ripper is definitely something that I'm interested in. So, yeah, 3 stars for that one. And then Tiger's Eye, I finished on the same day as Heart of Evil. And like I said, it's the 3rd book in the Stacey Justice mystery series by Barbara Anino. I would say these are paranormal cozy mysteries. This one follows Stacey Justice, who is a newspaper reporter who has a history of trying to avoid her family's practice of witchcraft. And so in the first book, she kind of doesn't want to have anything to do with it. But now that we're in the 3rd book, she's more accepting of it. This particular one, the mystery or the subject matter of this story follows something that was hinted at the end of the 2nd book, and it has to do with the death of her father. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. I have rated all 3 books so far in this series 3 stars. None of them have really stood out to me, though I am enjoying the mysteries. There are definite points in this series where Stacey gets herself into a bit of trouble investigating these murders or these cases, and it does get a bit hairy. And I find that those situations are the ones that I am being drawn to as far as the storyline. She is in pretty much close contact with her aunts and her grandmother, and there's something in their relationship that I'm not really enjoying. There's an aspect to it that I don't like, and I'm not sure if that's what's hindering my enjoyment of this series, but I am continuing this series as well, even though I have only given these books 3 stars. But yeah, I'm borrowing those from Kindle Unlimited. They also come with an audiobook of the book, so I have been listening to all of them. And the narrator I didn't quite care for in the first book, but now that we're in the 3rd book, I think she's hit her stride and is doing a much better job. And so I'm looking forward to see what she brings in the 4th installment, as well as what that storyline brings to this series. So then I went into a buddy read of The Demon King, which is the first book in the Seven of Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima. I've been meaning to read a book of this author's for a very long time. I had heard my friend Raul over at Latin Lector talk about, I think it was this book, quite a bit ago in one of his videos. And I actually have one of her books on my shelves, but it's not from this series, it's from a different one. But I never went to go pick it up and read it. So, as you know, I've been doing several buddy reads with my friend Jody, who's on Twitter. And we had set up a buddy read for this particular book for November. And another new friend joined us, and her name is Lauren. I'll link both of them down in the description box below, as well as Raul and Sarah, who I mentioned earlier from Steeped in Books. So you can go check all of them out. But anyway, back to this one. As far as I know, Cinda Williams Chima does only fantasy books. And this is like a YA fantasy. It's about a boy. Oh, I can't remember what his name is. Hold on one second. His name is Han. And he has these silver cuffs on his wrists, but he doesn't understand why or know why he has them. But they're magical in the fact that he's had them ever since he's known, and they seem to grow with him. So as he gets older, they get bigger and bigger, but he can't really take them off. And every time he tries to, like, drop a hint that he wants to take them off, or he wants to, like, sell the cuffs for money because his family is poor, and he needs the funds to help feed his mother and his younger sister, he comes up against a hard wall of no. And nobody will say anything more to him about that. At the beginning of this book, we also meet his friend whose name is Dancer, and there's something about Dancer that comes up, and he seems to know a bit about magic. Not sure why he knows about magic, but he seems to know a bit about it. We also meet a princess whose name is Resa. She is the princess to the kingdom, and she's kind of just come back to the castle after being away, learning things, and she's definitely got ideas about what she wants to do with their country and things she wants to change, but her mother doesn't want her to have those types of ideas. For the entirety of this book, we're bouncing back and forth between the points of view of Han and Resa and their kind of journey to finding out about themselves and things about the kingdom. This story was very, very slow to get off the ground. I don't think it really picked up for me until maybe the last couple chapters. There was a lot of setup for things that I don't feel that are important to the story. Now, that being said, since this is a first installment to a series, I may not know the importance of things that I have read in this installment. However, it was kind of boring. I know Jodi DNF'd it early on. That's how slow the story was to pick up. Lauren and I trudged through it to the end, but there were times where I know I myself was thinking about DNFing it. It wasn't bad. I just wasn't enjoying it, I guess. I mean, I ended up giving this one 3 stars, even though I think it's more like a 2.5. It's so hard for me to talk about this because there are definitely things I'm interested about in regards to Han and Resa and how they're going to go about from where we left them at the end of this book. But this particular book was very, very slow. It didn't keep my interest, and the only reason why I kept up with the reading schedule was because I knew there was someone else on the schedule with me, and I didn't want to fall behind. Now, like I said, I'm very interested to know where Resa and Han's story is going to go from here. But I kind of feel like I wasted my time with this installment, so I don't know. I'm kind of thinking fantasy books are not for me because I've read several recently. And though I really enjoy fantasy, like movies and TV shows, the books just aren't doing it for me. I don't think I've rated one fantasy novel that I've read recently more than 3 stars. So maybe I have to reassess what I'm reading better. but I am going to continue to the next installment in this series with Lauren. We will be trying that out in January because we both felt like we needed a break. But yeah, I'm hoping the next one in this series is more enticing, grabs my attention more, but I wasn't too impressed with this first book. Then I read Ruined by Paula Morris. This is a YA ghost story. It follows a girl named Rebecca who lives with her dad. Her mom has passed away, so it's just her and her dad. They live in New York. And then her dad tells her that he needs to go on a business trip to China and that she needs to go to New Orleans and live with her aunt for an extended period of time. Rebecca does not like this idea at all. She doesn't know her aunt very well, but her father says she has no choice. So off she goes to Louisiana, or New Orleans specifically, I believe, and she's living with her aunt and her cousin, and she starts off at a new school, and there are a clique of affluent kids who are kind of not nice to her. She's having a hard time fitting in. She doesn't make very many friends, and she sees the clique of affluent kids sneak into the cemetery one night because her aunt's house is right across from the cemetery. So she decides to go and spy on them and see what they're up to. And she meets a ghost. This ghost is a 16-year-old girl. Her name is Lizette. And she finds that she's not only able to see her, but she's also able to hold conversations with her. So Lizette is kind of like her bright light in this dreary situation that she finds herself in. She's able to talk to her. Lizette understands her. And so Rebecca kind of finds out from Lizette about Lizette's past, how she died, and there's something in Lizette's past that's kind of affecting present day, and I think that's where I'll stop on the summary for this one. This is not a scary ghost story. I think the most scary part about this story is how people kind of act towards each other. There is a plot line of people feeling better than others for the color of their skin, and that more has to do with the fact that that portion of the story deals in Lizette's past, which I believe was in the 1800s or so. But again, I've had this book on my to-read list since 2011. I put it on my to-read list January 10th, 2011. So 8 years later, I finally read it. And it wasn't great. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. It took me over a month to finish, and I probably should have DNF'd it, but by the time I thought, okay, I should just let this one go, I was so close to the end, less than 100 pages left to go, so I just decided to finish it up and see what comes of this story. I did feel like there was progression of the story throughout this series. However, there was some secrecy that I didn't agree with, and some of the actions that were taken I also didn't like. I was very surprised to find out that this is the first book in a duology, because I do feel like the story that was in this installment was wrapped up in this first book. That being said, I will not be continuing to the second book in this duology. I do feel like I got a complete story in this one. And even though I didn't enjoy this one too much, I would be interested to see something else from this author. The writing style is very easy to read, and so I think maybe it was just this story that didn't grab me. And so, yeah, I definitely give this author another try. The last book I read in November was the third book in the Crazy Rich Asians series by Kevin Kwan. This one's called Rich People Problems, and I enjoyed this one. I can't really tell you what this one is about because this one does follow like the same characters throughout the entire series. But I'm sure you all know what Crazy Rich Asians, the first book, is about. So I had put off this series for a really long time. There was just so much hype around this series that whenever something is hyped like that, I get very apprehensive about reading it because there is a good chance that I am not going to enjoy said book or movie or TV show as much as everybody else is. And I don't want to have to deal with that backlash. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the series more than I thought I was going to. I related a lot to things that were being said about being a part of an Asian family, the whole trying to live your life honestly to yourself, but it being seen as a disgrace or shameful or bringing dishonor to your family is something that I really related to a lot. That's touched on heavily in this third installment. A lot of things in regards to even kind of a class hierarchy in regards to what type of Asian you are, which is not something that a lot of people who are not Asian understand. It's something that I've come up with myself, especially when I go home to Hawaii. Being perceived as, not the right type of Asian, I guess, is the best way to put it. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the series more than I thought. I related to a lot of it, though that being said, I couldn't say that I enjoyed it because of that, because those things were not enjoyable for me to live through. And it kind of brings me stress, to be honest. But this book also touched on, how family thinks that, they know better than you do how to raise your own kid or how you should live your life. And that's a big part in this last one. I should also mention that this particular installment deals with an attempted suicide. So just know that going into it. There are also a couple characters in this series that I didn't really enjoy. One of them being Eddie, for those of you who are familiar with this series. I don't like him at all. I dislike the way he acted throughout this entire series. And also the Kitty Pong character. I kind of wish she wasn't part of the story or this series at all. I don't feel like she added anything to it and that her portions were very fillery. I didn't enjoy the sections of story that were from her point of view. But I really enjoyed Rachel and Nick's story, and I enjoyed seeing them throughout this series. I also enjoyed Astrid's story, though towards the end there it got, in this last installment, it got really hairy. And I disliked how she was being treated. But yeah, I think I ended up giving this whole series 4 stars. I definitely gave this last installment 4 stars. I believe they're making the other books in this series into movies. I haven't heard anything for a while, but I haven't really been looking. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this series. it was definitely a highlight to my reading in November. Also, I listened to all of these books on audio, or a majority of it, because I did have physical copies to read, but I just enjoyed the audiobook so much. The narration is great, the audiobooks are entertaining, and they just gave a life to the story and the characters that I wasn't getting while I was reading the physical book. So if you haven't read this series, or even if you have, try it on audiobook, because I think, at least for me, it really brought a whole dimension of enjoyment to this series. So yeah, that finishes all of the novels that I've read for the month of November. I'm still trying to work my way through 52 books read in 2019. I think by the end of November, I still have 8 to go. It is manageable, though I'm not sure that I'm going to get to it. Like I said, I've been kind of slumpy lately. All of the books that I've picked up have not been more than 3 stars, except for the Crazy Rich Asians book that I just finished. And so I'm kind of disheartened, and I'm kind of scared to pick up my next book, just because I haven't been picking in really enjoyable books lately. But if I don't finish 52 novels by the end of 2019, I'm not going to feel bad about it, because I did read a lot this year. I read a lot of manga. I'm really interested to see what that page count's going to be at the end of the year, because I read a lot of manga this year. But yeah, let me know if you read any of these books, what you thought of them, or what your most favorite book that you read in November was, because yeah, I need some inspiration. I need some inspiration to pick more enjoyable books. I'm hoping December will bring me more enjoyment, because I do have several Christmas novels on the agenda. 3 of them for my Book One Cozies Club. So if you haven't seen my post on that, I will link the group down in the description box below. It's the Mystery Madness Goodreads group. Look for the Book One Cozies Club section and the December books that we will be reading. Also, check out all of my friends down in the description box below that I have mentioned, as well as my finishing the series video on the 2nd book in the Crew of Hunters series and the 3rd book in the Stacy Justice series. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you're all doing great, and until next time, take care, and smile always. Bye.